All right, let's just dive right into this one, because tonight I am opening up a very specific, kind of creepy case file. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to put on our skeptical investigator hats and break down some of our area's most notorious, deeply chilling end-of-year urban legends. Look, we all know the stories that get passed around the campfire, right? But today we're focusing on the cold, hard facts. We're going to use this case file to separate the ghost stories from the visceral, terrifying reality of what actually lurks in the dark. So, here's our case briefing docket for today. First, the old hospital legends. Second, investigating the tunnels. Third, human monsters in the dark. And finally, number 4, the psychology of fear.
Case file number 1, the old hospital legends, unearthing the 1950s history.
Now, before this building was a private school full of kids running around in uniforms, it had a much darker purpose. Back in the 1950s, it was actually built as a hospital for the sick. Specifically, it housed tuberculosis wards. And here's where it gets wild. When they tore up the ground to build the school decades later, they reportedly found a ton of skeletal remains. Why? Well, rumor had it the hospital used a massive underground tunnel system to quietly dispose of infected bodies. By the 2020s, the school was totally closed and abandoned, but man, those tunnels left a lasting scar on our town's psyche.
And honestly, that brings us right to the very definition of an urban legend. Think about it. When you have a massive, aging building with a literal history of death, totally natural phenomena get misinterpreted. Every single time the old pipes groaned or the foundation settled, the students didn't logically think, oh hey, that's just an old building settling. No way. Their minds immediately jump to the restless spirits of tuberculosis victims. It's just how we naturally, almost instinctively rationalize the things we're afraid of. And that fear, that is exactly what a high school bully named Steve tried to exploit. So Steve broke into the school to pull a prank. He's tearing up classrooms, spray painting horror movie tropes in bright red paint across the lockers. Stuff like, get out, and my personal favorite, death is coming. But the prank completely backfired on him. Steve ended up getting caught because he literally fled the building screaming his head off, claiming he heard evil, unnatural voices rising up from the basement.
Which brings us to case file 2, investigating the tunnels into the dark.
Okay, so a group of skeptical students, basically self-proclaimed nerds who absolutely despised Steve, they decided to break in on the last day of school to prove he was just a coward making up ghost stories. But sneaking into a cavernous, dusty basement primes the human brain for absolute terror. First off, you've got the total isolation of a massive, cold, underground space that's filled with unsettling old religious statues. Then you add sensory deprivation into the mix. Keep in mind, this was way before cell phone flashlights, so they were relying on these cheap, super weak dollar store flashlights that barely even pierce the darkness. Finally, natural human panic just starts to take over the longer they stay down there in the pitch black.
And then, deep in the corner of that freezing basement tucked behind some boxes, they actually found it. A hole in the wall, about the size of a large beach ball, completely opening up into a pitch black tunnel. The exact tunnel rumored to hold the bodies of the sick. So one student loses rock, paper, scissors and crawls inside. Suddenly he hears a sound, and it wasn't the wind. It was this strange, unnatural whooshing sound that slowly morphed into a loud whisper. I mean, the tension must have been absolutely insane.
So he clicks on his cheap little flashlight, totally expecting to see the undead, evil spirit that Steve had warned everyone about. But instead, he faced a truly terrifying reality. Sitting about 15 feet away was a severely emaciated, half-naked man with totally vacant eyes. It was a feral squatter who had been living in the sewer system connected right to the tunnels. And as the student tried to slowly back away, this man lunged at him, making these awful, unnatural noises and literally chased him right to the basement stairs. It wasn't paranormal at all, you guys. It was profoundly human.
Moving on to case file 3, human monsters in the dark, escaping the woods and hallways. Because here's the thing, that feral squatter was not an isolated incident. There is a deeply disturbing pattern in our local encounters of myth versus reality, and it forces us to ask this pivotal question. If ghosts aren't real, what exactly is waiting in the dark when we hear a twig snap or see a shadow move in the corner of our eye?
Well, as our next 2 case files show, the threats waiting in the dark are very real, and they have a pulse. We're going to look at the incredibly chilling case of the college costume party, and then the deeply unsettling case of the substitute history teacher.
Let's start with the college party. So a student comes home for the summer and throws a massive Halloween in May party at this remote mansion.
Deep into the night, he spots a girl wearing a bright gold masquerade mask who wordlessly waves him toward the dark woods. He follows her out there. He's freezing cold, wearing literally nothing but a swimsuit and a hockey mask. And as he loses sight of her and finally turns back, he hears a soft voice from the trees say, "Don't go back yet. Come and find me first." It plays out exactly like a supernatural horror movie trope.
So he finds her in the dark. She says, "I know who you are." And right then, he realizes it is not a ghostly forest spirit at all. It's his ex-girlfriend. He had broken up with her weeks ago because she was getting overly obsessive. And this brings us to this absolutely staggering number, 8. She drove 8 entire hours, crossing state lines just to hide in the dark woods so she could sprint at him from the shadows and take a full overhead swing at his head with a solid metal baseball bat. Yeah, he barely dodged it and literally ran for his life.
Next up, we have the substitute history teacher. She stayed late on the last day of school and found this quiet, brilliant student named Ben just lingering around her desk. He acted super strange and eventually left. Well, a few days later, she wakes up in the middle of the night, walks down the hall, and just freezes. Standing right outside her 7-year-old son's bedroom is a dark figure. She flips the light on and it's Ben. He smiles at her and calmly says, "Hey, Miss Jones, nice house," before literally diving out a 2-story window and vanishing into the night.
You know, when we feel watched, our brains instantly jump to the paranormal. But look at the actual physical evidence left behind in this case. The moved purse on her chair. The reality is, Ben used that exact moment lingering at her desk at school to steal her home address from her ID. Muddy footprints out by the shed. Ben was meticulously stalking her property. An unlocked back door wasn't some ghostly draft letting a spirit in. It was a silent, calculated break-in by a deeply disturbed student.
Which leads us to Case File 4, The Psychology of Fear, Why We Prefer Ghosts. After reviewing these case files, we really have to analyze the psychological clash between our rational doubt and our profound fear of the unknown. Like, why do we subconsciously prefer the idea of ghosts? Well, it's because supernatural encounters are abstract. They're almost a comfort, like a tidy, spooky little box we can just pack the unknown into. But human depravity? That is visceral. Processing the reality of feral tunnel dwellers, or a vengeful ex driving 8 hours with a deadly weapon, or a quiet student silently standing over your sleeping child, that completely shatters our illusion of safety. Human monsters are unpredictable, and honestly, that makes them infinitely more terrifying.
So, if there is a core thesis to take away from this explainer today, it is this. Isolation and darkness absolutely amplify our natural fears. It plays tricks on our minds, for sure. But when the dust settles, the real danger isn't paranormal at all. It's human.
I want to leave you with this final thought. The next time you're home alone and you hear a strange rustling outside, or maybe a floorboard creaks in the dark hallway, ask yourself, is it really a ghost you should be afraid of, or is it something breathing, thinking, and waiting? Make sure those doors are locked tonight, folks. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and please, stay safe out there.